Dear brothers, one day away from 100 episodes, boys. Crazy to think about. A lot of fun things that have happened over the last 100 episodes. It's just crazy to think about. I've got this big board off to my left called the Big Ass Calendar. And looking across the year, 50 episodes was on March 29th. So we'll be at 100 episodes tomorrow. And 200 episodes on October, what looks like 25th, and 247 episodes by the end of the year. What a hell of a goal that is. Thank you so much for all of you that have been a part of that. It means a lot. This office is finally coming together. You guys can't see it now, but I've got family pictures in front of me, and I'm going to keep making edits behind me. I've got a couple of pictures coming in. They're going to go up over my bookshelf, and for those of you that can't see, I've got me and my wife's diplomas over here to our right. I got the hard hat that my dad used to wear to work, amongst other things. So one of these days I'll let you guys know all the stuff that's inside my office. But today we're going to talk a little bit about something that I've seen recently with myself and with others. And it's this over-identification with our stuff or talents, skills that we have. And so I want to lead off. Some of you might know that I enjoy Stoic philosophy. I think people get a little bit too into the weeds, if you will, sometimes with Stoic philosophy. Speaking of, I think sometimes people probably worship it almost like it's a religion. And that is not my position. I think that some of the Stoics had really fabulous ideas, their concepts on what you can and can't control, and not getting too caught up in what's happening in the world, focusing on yourself and your own issues. The rest of the world can deal. There is a lot of things I really like in Stoic philosophy, but Epictetus specifically and Seneca are probably my two favorites. Marcus Aurelius is probably the most well-known, but there are times where I find him, I remember in the beginning of Meditations, the guy who writes the foreword talks about how you can feel a bit melancholy coming out of him as you finish Meditations. And that's actually kind of how I view him, is a bit melancholy at times. And so anyways, so Epictetus had the Enchiridion, or the Good Life Handbook, basically handwritten by a follower of his, but in a different writing called How to Be Free, he talks a little bit about rich people or people that are well-spoken. And the exact quote is, "I am richer than you, therefore I am better than you." And, quotations, "I am more eloquent than you, therefore I am better than you. But the following inferences are more cogent. I am richer than you, therefore my property is better than yours." Or, "I am richer than you," or "I am more eloquent than you, therefore my diction is better than yours. But you yourself are neither property nor diction." And I'm saying diction, not addiction, just for those of you listening. But Epictetus, in much of his writing, basically leans in and talks to the fact that you are not the things that you have. You are not your speech. You are not your wealth. You are not your riches. And I think that this really hits on the two heads that I talked about earlier, which is you are not your stuff, your material possessions, including money, of course, and you're not your talents. He talks about diction or your speech. You are not the stuff that you have. And one of the reasons for that is when you identify so strictly with your stuff, with your cars, with your house, with your lifestyle, or with something that you're good at, football, your speaking, your smarts when it comes to business, your ability to play the piano, whatever the skill is, when you identify with those things and you and that thing are one and the same, you will start to worship that thing. It is your whole life. In its absence, you would die. There is no end to it. I think to myself about athletes in this case all the time. This was me. When I was in college, football was my identity. It was all I knew. It was what I wanted to do. It was what I worshiped. And that all, like I've talked about in prior episodes, kind of burnt to the ground. And my identity was really lost. I didn't know what else to do. Like football was why people liked me, why I went to college. It was just so much a part of my life. And then that rug was pulled out from under me, which was partly my own fault. And I didn't know what to do. I had no other identity. I think about, for those of you that have seen Friday Night Lights, the movie, not the series, that movie was huge. I think I was in 7th grade when that came out, so it was a massive part of my childhood. But Boobie Miles, the main character, or the superstar in the beginning of the movie, tears his ACL and is basically told, you're done. And then he goes out and plays again and hurts it even further. And there's a scene where he leaves the locker room. He tells everybody in there, good luck, go get it, whatever. And then he goes out into the car with his uncle. It's a powerful scene, and one that has always spoken to me, if you will. I'm trying to come up with the right word, but it's always just really touched me because I understand that more as an adult now. And he's sitting there with his uncle, and he basically says, what are we going to do? I don't have anything else but football. And he talks about how they practiced, and they had talked about him going to the pros. And what the hell am I going to do without my knee? All I have is football. And he's just sobbing in his uncle's arms. And that's what happens when you identify with something so deeply that once it's taken from you, if it's taken from you, your life kind of crumbles. And I'm not saying that those things aren't real loss either. So I'll use the example of me, I guess. Like I worked my whole middle school, elementary, middle, high school, early college to be as good at football as I could. And when that kind of crumbled, even in the early stages of it crumbling, it just sucked. I mean, I imagine to myself, there are so many people that work so hard to accomplish some task, some goal, and it never comes to fruition, or it breaks down in the end, or their work is all completely burned and destroyed. I think about Viktor Frankl, or Frankl, however you want to say it. There's conversation about when he gets into the concentration camps and he has his manuscripts, work that he's worked on for years, his life's work, his talk about psychotherapy and all of this brilliant work burned, destroyed, just like that. And he has such an incredible view on it, but that still damages you. That still hurts. That stings. But what I think too many people get mixed up, what too many men are screwing up, is that you aren't that thing. It is something you had created. It is a talent that you have. It is stuff that you may have. It's a car. It's a this. It's a that. It's one of the things that I love about the Stoics is they talk a lot about not identifying with the things that you have. They're just things. And I love the idea of you are just renting them. You don't get to keep them. They're not really yours. They have to go back to whoever the owner is eventually. So don't become so attached to things that you worship them. And once they get lost or they have to go back, you are so destroyed to your foundation that you can't function. And I also would argue that this same thing happens. So we've talked about material possessions, talked a little bit about skills, talents, football in my case, or the Boobie Miles case, or what have you. But this same thing occurs with belief. If I believe something so wholeheartedly and someone presents a case that completely changes how I view it, completely antithetical to what I had believed in the past, that rocks my foundation to the point of fracturing that foundation. Many of you have probably experienced that. I have experienced that in many ways, certainly from a believing in God perspective, when people have presented me with things that I just almost were antithetical to what I believed. Antithetical, what a word for the day. But there were things I didn't understand. And when someone presents you with, hey, this is what this is, or this is another way to look at it, and it completely challenges what you believe, most people back into a corner and they're like, no, that can't be true. That isn't true. You see it all the time with politics and what people think of the world. They make these claims about X, Y, and Z, and I'm this and I'm that, and they have no proof. But when they're presented with harsh proof, they're like, no, not a thing. There's no way, because they believe in something so wholeheartedly that if it's not true, the things that they believe their life is important or built on fracture. And that's a terrible place to be. And so I think what I kind of want to move towards in this conversation is, you guys, I think I've beaten the dead horse of, you aren't your stuff. When you identify with your things or with your money or with your talents, eventually those things go away. Even your physical stuff. As we age, we lose our physical abilities in some capacity. Ideally, all of you listening to this are working out and staying on top of it, but you're not going to be what you once were. So if you worshiped your ability to move and shake and be fit and what have you, that's going to go away. Then what do you have? What are you going to worship now? And so one of the things that I have fallen back on often, the Bible is very clear on possessions and what they mean. In Luke, it talks about, be on guard against all covetousness, against wanting other things, because one's life does not consist in the abundance of material possessions. And I think the Bible is very clear that we are not our stuff. We are not a things. The only thing that we are, that we can fall back on, is that we are children of God. That's it. For people that don't believe in that, I don't really know what you fall back on, because I think all obligation and moral obligation and the existence of good and evil and being a good human being and having these traits has to come from somewhere. And so in my own mind, the thing that you have to fall back on is the existence of, I am a child of God. I have worth. I have value that isn't bound up in my stuff. It's not bound up in my artistic abilities or my singing abilities or my football abilities, my athletic abilities. It's not in how much money I make in my business or, how many sales that I had this past month. None of that matters, because at the end of the day, the people that do the best, that succeed the wrong word, the people that have the most peace are comfortable with or without their stuff and talents. That doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt if they are stripped from them, but that's not where they find their solace. They aren't their stuff. They just so happen, I'd say this to people all the time when I'm talking about how clinicians deal with patients. It's not, this is my total knee replacement that I have to see next week. No, it's Joe Johnson, who happens to have a knee replacement. I'm separating them they are something separate. It's the same way that I view people that make mistakes. It's, this person stole. Well, that doesn't make them a thief. It just means that they are Joe Schmo who happened to steal. A lot of times we put those things together. I say this with my wife and myself a lot when we talk about ourselves. Like, it's not, you're so stupid. It's, no, you made a stupid mistake, or I made a stupid mistake. That doesn't make me inherently stupid. It's that I did something stupid. The action is stupid or silly or isn't using time well. You have to separate those two things. You aren't those things. But what you are is made wonderfully in the image of God. You have special talents and gifts that, Lord willing, you are looking to find and utilize and contribute to the world with. But what we have to get through our heads is that it is far better to have less or have little or appreciate the things we have, and to understand that our worth comes from Christ. It comes from God, versus having all of the world and all of this talent and we identify with it, because the minute that that's gone away, your peace is smoked. And you really don't have peace when you have those things, because you're constantly trying to keep it up. Oh, I got to do this better. I got to do that better. And if I lose this, I'm screwed. And that leads to a lot of other issues. It just leads to ruin. When you worship the stuff you have, when you worship your gifts and your talents, it eventually leads to ruin. And it leads to you not having anything worth holding on to because you identify as your things, as opposed to identifying as a beautifully crafted human with special gifts and talents that are designed to be utilized and enjoyed, peacefully enjoyed. That's what we're called to do. That's what the Bible talks about. I wouldn't, a lot of people don't believe those things, and I get it. There's a long time that I don't, or that I struggle with it and I don't understand. And I can tell you that as I've shifted my mindset away from I am all the stuff that I have, which is hard. I like stuff. I like things. It's fun to get new stuff. It's a big dopamine hit, but I'm not those things. I'm not this house that we have or the cars that we have. I just happen to be a person that owns those things for now. Eventually they're gone. If I die tomorrow, what's it matter? All this stuff is going somewhere else and I get to meet my maker. So just understand, fellas, that when you have things, or as you look at the stuff you have, this would be my challenge to you. As you look at your home, your cars, your money, your stuff, if it was stripped from you tomorrow, what would you do? How would you feel? And if the answer is, I would lose my life, I wouldn't know what to do, I'd have no further purpose or calling, then you need to reevaluate who you think you are and why you have worth in this world beyond just the things that you can do or the things that you own. Because it is a ruinous, dangerous, and destructive world that you're heading towards if your whole life is bundled up in the stuff or skills that you have. And there's easy places to see that in sports and in business, and people lose this or lose that. And the real answer needs to be, if I have none of those things, but I have the love of God, which you do, I think I'm going to be all right. So I'm going to leave it at that. Happy 99th episode. Happy pre-100th episode eve, if you will, which is crazy exciting. I love you all. God bless. Be strong. Whew. Episode 99 in the books. Episode 100 comes tomorrow, baby. Love you, boys. We'll see y'all.